Nobody's been doing that for years. Ask them to
Yeah.
suddenly come together and just be like, oh hey, like be a Nike commercial.
So I
It's
feel like
not
it
how
has
it
something.
works.
I feel like it has something to do with the decline of the Brazilian league. I mean, I read an article shortly after the U.S. got eliminated that in order for U.S. to realistically want to win the World Cup, MLS eventually needs to be a world class league, and I feel like that makes a lot of sense for that same reason. If you want a bunch of your players playing similar styles to each other, you want most of them playing a similar style for their club teams. Like, I mean, Germany, like I said before, I mean, most of that team is Bayern Munich. The guys that aren't play for like Arsenal for the most part, who are coached by a very German style pragmatic type guy, who's actually French, but whatever. Um, and Brazil doesn't have that anymore. They don't get their players from the domestic league because the domestic league has been going downhill for like 10 years now at least, right?
Well, it's on the way up because Brazil itself is being buoyed by oil money. But so there's something else looking at the German side. Like, yes, a lot of their players play together a lot. They have a coherent style. But another thing was that there was a big change in Germany in the mid 2000s when they felt like they had some disappointing performances in the World Cup, and they started bringing lots of younger players through, and the architect of that was Jurgen Klinsmann. I mean, he's never been a very tactically astute coach, and even when he was coaching the German national team, Jogi Löw was the guy who was calling all the shots about who was going to be in and where they were going to play. Klinsmann was really in charge of youth development and bringing through a lot of those players like Özil and Müller and Khedira and a lot of those guys, bringing them into the national team setup because he saw them being promising young players and kind of scooting out some of the old guard that was in there, and that's when they really started to turn it around in the last like 7-8 years, and it's paid huge dividends. They've all been playing together for a while, and yeah, a lot of them are in Europe and playing together in teams that have somewhat similar styles, but I think a lot of it too is just having a good coach and having a good youth setup that keeps people playing together for long periods of time. And the Brazilian team is kind of schizophrenic. It's just constantly, you've got a couple mainstays in there, but a lot of the midfield and a lot of the supporting cast is just constantly getting rotated. That's got to be really hard to maintain anything. So Klinsmann. So maybe, hey, someday we'll be Germany. If we just keep playing Klinsmann. If we just keep paying Klinsmann like boatloads of money.
I was reminded recently, thinking about this before the pod reminded me of something Bruce Arena said at the beginning of the year, criticizing the appointment of Klinsmann and how the American team should be coached by an American guy and should be mostly made up of MLS players. I think all of that was really silly, but the point he was trying to get at, the last sentence that he said, which was, in reality, our solutions will ultimately come from our culture, which I feel like is, as an overarching point, is kind of what needs to happen in America. Just that we need to have not a distinct style of play, but just a continuous. There's a better word out there that I'm not finding in my head right now, but continuity is important. And like you said, Germany has it. Brazil doesn't. And the U.S. will want it eventually, and they're getting towards there. And that's what Arena was trying to say, but said a lot of really silly things before he said that.
Well, I think Arena's point misses a little bit because he says it needs to come from our internal culture. But I think the key is we have to jumpstart our internal culture. Our internal culture, I mean, it is what it is. It's what it's been for years, and without any changes being made, which is why they brought Klinsmann in the first place, was to make changes to the internal culture. They're not, he's not here just to recruit from overseas. He's here to rebuild everything from the youth on up, and I think he's been doing. I mean, we've seen results from that already, and I think that that's what it needs to be. It does need to come from within, but you need to change what that within is to get better product coming out of it.
Should we move on?
I think we should move on.
Let's make it happen.
Let's do it.
World Cup. Let's talk about MLS.
Yeah, fuck the world.
Well, we can bridge the two. There's some World Cup fueled funny transfer rumors.
Talk about the World Cup, can we just give a quick shout out to Costa Rica?
Yes, representing CONCACAF. Quarterfinal.
Say your goodbyes to Gio Gonzalez, Chris.
Hey, as long as it comes with a boatload of cash and we can buy in a replacement, I'm okay with it. Okay.
Man, I tell you, coming down to penalties for that team to go to the semis, huh?
That was
Yeah.
They were what, the third team out, or were they the second or the third team out of CONCACAF? They were the second place, right?
Third.
Yeah, they were second place.
Okay.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Honduras was third. Mexico was
From
fourth.
beginning to end. And if you looked at their performances, it was, that's why I'm going to be saying goodbye to Giancarlo Gonzalez. They had a couple of shutouts in the World Cup in one of the highest scoring World Cups of all time. They got out of a ridiculously tough group that I think once they started excelling and became a group of death, they're not going to.
They allowed
That's
two
bad.
total goals, one to Uruguay and one to Greece, the most boring team to watch in the World Cup.
Yeah.
And they shut out Italy, they shut out England, they shut out the Dutch. So good on you, Costa Rica.
That Costa Rican offside trap was amazing. I saw a stat somewhere. It was like Costa Rica.
It was twice as much as the next.
Yeah, it was like they had 41. Yeah, and the next team had 20 or something like that. I mean, they were just so well drilled. Nobody could get past them. I swear, in that game against Holland, like Ian Robin was offside about 30 times. It was crazy. That's the kind of thing that you can do, like when you're willing to sit back and you have a really well-drilled team. I mean, it's amazing. It's really, I wanted them to go through so badly.
Me too.
Yeah, it was.
I was conflicted because we talked to our new friend Daniel the Dutchman recently, and yeah, but I like Costa Rica too.
Yeah, Daniel the Dutchman.
I don't know.
There's nothing wrong with Dutch people. I just happen to not want them to win most of the time.
Yeah. I am excited to have Gonzalez and Parker side by side again. That's going to make me feel a lot better about the crew going forward. Get our
like a week
defenders out of there.
Speaking of the crew,
Yeah.
I was really reaching for that one. I was like,
well, no. If we're gonna do a transition, we should transition to the. So we just talked about Gio Gonzalez's transfer rumors, maybe.
Oh,
and
we should
there's
talk
a bunch
about
of other
other
guys.
Yeah. So Yedlin maybe to Roma, but maybe to apparently everywhere.
Yeah, it sounds like
Pretty much.
They're gonna quarter him, like everybody gets a little bit of him, and then they like transformer reassemble him after he's absorbed the styles of Italy, England, France, and Portugal. Do I understand this correct?
Yeah, so it seemed like just a few days ago that it was pretty much going to be Roma. That seemed to be a pretty solid lockdown. Lots of different sources reporting it, but Sounder at Heart today came out and said that they've kind of talked to the agent, and it sounds like there is no done deal. But regardless of where he goes, they still expect that to be this week essentially, or in the next week. That in addition to Roma, clubs in England, Spain, other Italian clubs, and even France are all interested.
If you're thinking about the future right back for the U.S. men's national team, what league do you want to see him play in? Like, what league is the best to go develop in?
The league he starts in.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's a good point. I mean, so if he goes to Roma, and this was what I read, if he goes to Roma, he probably gets loaned out to Genoa. I read that somewhere.
Right. Yeah, that is accurate. Those are the reports. Is that they're saying basically that they would make the deal now. It would either be a delayed transfer to the winter window, or he would be transferred but loaned to the Sounders for the remainder of the season, and then in December or whenever would then go to Genoa. So it doesn't seem like he'd be first team with Roma right away, but I guess the argument is playing time versus role models. You know, like if he's going to go play and get to spend time with Ashley Cole or someone like that, then that's a good argument for not getting starting time. But I would hate for him to do something like we've seen other American nationals and go and ride the pine somewhere.
That's why I don't want him to go to England.
Start in MLS.
Yeah, and I mean beyond that, I just
England is probably the worst choice.
When you watch the defensive intelligence and the positioning of a lot of players in England, and it's like he would go there and they'd be like, "You're really fast, just run like a chicken with your head cut off," and and that'll last him for like 3 years, and it's not. I don't see that being a good path. I don't think that particularly in the lower levels or mid levels of the English Premier League, like. Those guys defend abysmally a lot of the time. It's not. Yeah, I don't think it's a good place to develop your tactical awareness and skill.
The other reason I don't like England is because I feel like England is like all of the English journalists, once England got knocked out of the World Cup and didn't have anyone to support, they kind of latched onto the U.S. team, and so they really hyped up the U.S. team back home, I feel like. And Yedlin is especially one of those guys who an English team could sign as a marketing thing and not necessarily for his soccer skills, and that is not generally a good thing when you're trying to develop your soccer skills.
Yeah.
Can we just talk about how awesome it is that a 20-year-old kid could be signed by an English team for marketing? From a perspective of like a homegrown Seattle player, that's a thing that could happen.
Yeah.
I mean, England makes the most sense from a marketing standpoint just because of all of the players that he played against who are going to be playing in the EPL. I mean, Belgium is like 70% from the EPL, right? With Lukaku and Vermaelen and those guys, and Portugal's got a few too. Nani's in there, and he plays for Manchester, I think, a little bit.
Yeah. But I mean, just because, it is cool that they can sign him as a marketing perspective, but like, I remember in the early 2000s, people were signing Chinese players for marketing gags. It doesn't really help the Chinese team very much.
Well, that's because they were trying to expand their brand in China.
Yeah,
I don't think the EPL needs any help. I'm saying it locally, because locally in England, people looked at Yedlin and said, "Holy shit, he can do things against EPL competition." I don't think EPL needs any help marketing to us anymore.
You never know. But yeah, I think going to Italy would be a really good move, particularly if you can start in Italy.
I like it. Italy's been mostly kind to Americans, I think.
Yeah, and I don't know. Spain is so. I mean, I love the style that a lot of Spanish teams play, but it's such a wacky league because it is so completely unbalanced and really chaotic with like constant ownership shifts and clubs going in and out of bankruptcy and players not getting paid and all this stuff. It seems like if you're at one of the big 3 or 4 clubs there, then yeah, but outside of that, it's kind of a cluster. So, I don't really watch any French league, so I have no opinion about that other than that, I suppose.
Bedoya's there.
Yeah, and he's at where? Lyon?
Not.
Oh, okay. Not.
While we are on this train, let's run down some of the other roster moves we're seeing based on World Cup performances. We're also seeing Beasler looking to get out. We see Jermaine Jones looking to get in. Which ones of these do you guys think will happen? Which ones do you think are just hype right now?
Beasler's weird because he's not 20, he's 27, and he's one of those guys who is like I think Yedlin definitely wants to go to Europe. And I think based on Klinsmann's directive to, hey, go play Champions League soccer, Yedlin thinks he can do that before the next World Cup cycle happens. And he probably should try.
And Roma is Champions League this year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm still hesitant on whether I think I want Yedlin to go because I feel like MLS is going to improve a lot over the next few years. I don't know. Beasler, on the other hand, he's 27. Which is surprising if you think about it, I feel like. because he hasn't been a part of the national team picture for that long, but he is already, like, the next World Cup he'll be 31, and he's someone who's probably as open to playing the rest of his career in Kansas City as he is going to Europe and trying for a mid-level German team, hoping to get noticed by someone that can give him Champions League time. That said, I think Beasler makes a more seamless transition to anybody in Europe. I think he starts easier than Yedlin would. And I think if SKC can get $6 million for him, they should probably sell him because his value is never ever going to be higher than it is right now. Same as Yedlin. Yedlin's could be higher, hypothetically, if he does really well for the next 4 years, and specifically if he does amazing again in Russia. But Beasler's market value is never getting any higher than it is right now.
Agreed.
I'd
like to see Beasler stay here. I mean, I'm still of the opinion that, like you said, I very strongly believe that the league is going to grow in leaps and bounds between now and the next World Cup. And if that's the case where Beasler both doesn't have a super strong desire to go, and it's not like, hey, you're going to be starting for Manchester. Like if it's not something like that, I would much rather see him stay here and continue to be a great player in the league, even if it means playing against him. I've kind of changed my tune a little bit on Yedlin. Like, I really love the idea of him staying here, but the more I started reading and realizing that the Sounders get 75% of any transfer fee, I started seeing dollar signs. I'll be honest.
Yeah, and that's my worry.
I mean, they're talking a $5 to $8 million transfer fee right now, which means the Sounders would get $675,000 in allocation, and everything else would be money to spend on the academy, like we've talked about, and on training facilities and physio and.
When you get that allocation money, and you can be another Toronto. I mean, Seattle's already halfway there in the first place, but you can kill the salary cap with that allocation money. You don't have a salary cap for a year or two.
You can pay down Ozzy Alonso, take the DP tag off of him, and bring in another full-fledged expensive DP.
Correct. You could have like 5 DPs with that allocation money, basically.
Bring in Jermaine Jones.
Oh my God! Don't even say that. That would make me so happy.
You guys are already running away with MLS. You don't need Jermaine Jones.
Well, for next year, Ian, we got to keep it up.
So we got to
defend the treble that we earned this year.
All right, yeah, let's do it. Who gets Jermaine Jones? My money's on the Aztecs.
The Aztecs. I like that we've already settled on that.
I don't know. You've got to think that NYCFC, they're going to have a lot of money.
They are going to splash the pot.
They are really going to have a lot of cash, and they're going to want to come in and compete. So
yeah, but you only get so many DP spots. Jermaine Jones is getting a DP spot, and they're going to use all theirs on international players like Lampard and other guys.
I don't know. You never know. I mean, you've got to think that for